I'm gonna be the chairperson or whatever the case. I'm not the chair, I'm just an ex officio member, but I'm just organizing our first capital planning committee meeting. This is a meeting of the capital planning committee. It is Tuesday, January 23rd at a little after 4 o'clock. Thank you for everybody for coming to the meeting. I'm joined here this afternoon by our treasurer, Dawn Swistak, who serves as her capacity as treasurer for the town on the committee, capital planning committee. I'm also joined today by Selectman Rich Ihacker for his position as being a selectman in town. He will be serving on the committee. Myself, Jim Ferrara, as the town administrator, will be serving as an ex officio role in the committee and advising the committee and meeting with the committee as I do with the finance committee. And also I'm joined here today with Ray Capaco, who serves on our finance committee, and he is the finance committee designee for the capital planning committee. So with that, this is our first official meeting of capital planning. One of our things that we have on the agenda to do is to organize the committee, okay? Who wants to, possibly take over as chairperson of the committee, or who would like to be, a clerk of the committee, and vice chair of the committee, so on and so forth. Before you are copies, I had the clerk run a copy of our bylaw on the capital planning committee, the updated one. I guess she provided us a copy of the entire bylaw. So I just needed a copy of the updated version that was recently passed at the November special, which we do have here. It has been passed, and it goes into
Page 8.
Page 8. Okay. It goes into the changes that were made. So I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to really look at that, in how this committee is structured, and what is our charge of our committee, because I think that's how sometimes committees get sidetracked, is they're not understanding what their roles and responsibilities are, and the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing. So we are still looking for 2 residents to serve on this committee, town residents. That can be an inquiry can be made to the town moderator, Dario Nardi. His email address is on the town's website, which anybody in town could just write him a quick email and explain why they feel as though that they would want to serve on the capital planning committee. So we're still looking for 2 other members. So everybody has been sworn in, I believe, that is on the committee, right? From the town clerk. The committee's charged is to study proposed capital projects and improvements involving major non-reoccurring tangible assets and projects which are purchased or undertaken at intervals of not less than 5 years, have a useful life of at least 5 years, cost over 25. What?
This says 3.
Should be 5.
Oh, and also this is wrong. I was like, cost over $5,000. I thought we.
Huh?
This
It should be cost over $25,000.
This says 5.
Okay, so she didn't give us the updated one. Okay, so I have it here. So that's
All right. So this is
that's the old
useful
bylaw.
life of 5 years.
Yep. So have a useful life of at least 5 years, cost over $25,000. All town officers and boards and committees, including the selectmen and the school committee, shall, by September 1st of each year, give the committee on forms prepared by it information concerning all anticipated projects requiring town meeting action during the ensuing 5 years, not 6 years. The committee shall consider the relative need, impact, timing, costs of these expenditures, and effect each will have on the financial position of the town. No appropriation shall be voted for a capital improvement request, not outlay, improvement request by a town department, board, or commission unless the proposed capital improvement is not reflected, it should be considered in the committee's report, or, not unless, or the committee shall have submitted a report to the Board of Selectmen explaining its omissions, okay? And so we'll have a capital improvement budget and plan for this year, and then the subsequent 4 consecutive years. So that's the entire 5-year plan. So section 2 should say, instead of 5, it should say 4 fiscal years. And so the clerk must have gotten confused and printed off the wrong copy. So this has been passed, the updated version has been passed at the fall special. It needs to be updated into our bylaws. And as soon as they are updated, that will be reflected in there. So that kind of gives you an idea as a broad picture of what the scope of our charge is going to be and what we're going to be looking at. You know, before it was 5,000, now it's 25,000. As things, you know, this bylaw probably hasn't been updated in years, and to reflect, you know, change in costs and change in materials and services. So this is what we're going to, you know, be molding after for our committee. So does anybody have any questions about the bylaw or any?
I do.
Yes.
So, no appropriation shall be voted for a capital outlay requested by a department, board, or commission, blah, 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 unless we recommend it, right?
Right.
How much power do we really have? Because I'll just say, I mean, so Tom, when he was highway guy, I mean, he would just bring things to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He would bypass this process, so.
Well, I
That
mean,
was-
you know, I think that is where we're all gonna have to work collectively to make sure that doesn't happen, right? That's not a best practice. You know, just having, you know, somebody put an article on for, you know, I wanna purchase, you know, $100,000, you know, piece of equipment. You know, at the end of the day, it's the selectmen's warrant, right? And they have control over what goes on and what doesn't go on. And if they don't want to put it on, they don't have to put it on.
Even a citizen petition.
Well, a citizen's petition is something
okay,
different.
right.
It's something different. It's something different. That's a different animal, but you know, and that will,
Okay, so if
that will be debated on the floor as a citizen's petition.
Okay, but department head just coming to a regular meeting about the warrant and saying, I want this article on, we can say no.
Correct.
Because you didn't go through this process.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think Tom ever did a citizen's petition. I think
Right.
probably I don't know, were you working at that point? Or was that
Yeah.
before you?
Yeah, and I think that was part of why this capital planning disbanded, is because departments just kind of go ahead and did their
Yeah.
own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know-
So there wasn't an adherence to the policy, so there was
Right.
no point of us existing.
So in all fairness to Tom, if he brought these articles up and the selectmen didn't quash them at the time, then it's shame on them, actually,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, he was just trying to do what he's doing, and they could have said no, so I guess, yeah, we'll have to be more stringent about this process.
And the goal here is to have everybody work collectively together, and so that you don't have, you know, silos that are running and working separately and not in coordination with the town's goals and objectives. This process is meant to bring everybody together And it's not meant to be punitive. Oh, you're not going to get this year because, you know, we don't like you. That's not the reason why we're doing this and going about it. The reason why is because we're trying to make it as organized and as a thoughtful process as possible. And to make sure that people understand that their tax dollars are being spent appropriately for the purposes that they're intended to be. And, you know, a whole thing of capital plans the goal is to have the greatest impact for the greatest number of residents in town. So if we're going to do a capital plan of sidewalks, or a capital plan of, you know, road construction, or a capital plan for, you know, the purchase of some new piece of life-saving equipment for the fire department or the ambulance department, you know, those have impacts to neighborhoods, to people, to residents, and are important, and should be, you know, listed and prioritized that way. Where we get in trouble is, you know, okay, what do you need this year? And we just, okay, well, you come in with your laundry list. Well, here's what I need. Can I have it? Well, there's you know, some of them may be very well valid, but it's not you know, the right thing to do when you're looking at to budget properly.
Mhm.
So
Well, I mean, if this process works, it's actually gonna be hard to deny anybody anything.
right,
Because if somebody's been saving like we want them to,
right,
when their time is up on that capital plan, we should really be granting.
right.
But I think
Them,
therein
you know.
lies the problem too, is making sure that we as capital planning are planning ahead for these projects. People should be coming to us years in
Yeah.
advance,
Yeah,
so that we
absolutely.
can properly budget for it and put money aside to fund that,
Yeah,
rather
that's,
than,
yeah.
Right.
you know, I
That's
know.
what I'm saying, like 5 years from now, if we've put away for a fire truck, Adam
Right.
should be, 5 years from now, he should be like, I'm ready, do it.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, yeah,
Right,
we've
exactly.
saved.
So, you know, in capital plans that I've been involved in the past, you know, they were like $500 million, right? So maybe our capital plan in you know, throughout the 5 years is $1 million. It seems like a lot for a small town, but, you know, and $500 million seemed like a lot for a city, but it's all relative, right? So, you know, if we have identified all these different projects and all of these different needs and prioritize those needs and look to ways to get to funding, you're going to start to see what we can and can't afford. It's just going to be that way, and it's not unrealistic if we come out and after we've done our 4-year capital plan and we say we need $1 million. Well, then that's what we're going to need to fund this regularly, and we can look at regular funding mechanisms besides just borrowing or throwing it against the tax rate. There's funding solutions, whether it be identifying state and federal grants. And what I mean by that is, I know, just like I got two state grants, actually 3 state grants last year for best practices. This year I was on the sidelines because I got the grants last year. One was $65,000 for Munis, for the financial management software that we implemented here. Okay, that saved the town money from doing some type of capital budget request for that. So that could have that $65,000. If they have that program next year from now, well, maybe I can do a best practices grant for one of these priority A projects that we have on our list, that I could weave it in there and maybe you can get it funded. The same thing for the financial feasibility study for the public safety complex. They're looking at ways of saving financial resources with that grant. So if I can, you know, pick one of the projects that we've identified as an A project and that grant becomes available, well, that's a funding stream for that particular project. That's taken off of our list. We don't have to do it through the budget process. We've also done, I've done in the past, pay-as-you-go capital, where we will set aside $100,000 or $200,000 of within the budget, and we say, okay, this is pay-as-you-go capital. So, you know, if we can address 4 projects on our A priority list, and it'll suck up that $200,000, there's the funding mechanism. So you don't have to, you know, borrow for that, okay? It's right there. You can do that as a line and put it in there. You know, and obviously, you know, on bigger projects, you know, we can talk about, you know, the possibility of, you know, looking at, you know, borrowing if they're that big of a project, you know. So, you know, there's whole hosts of different things that you can do. And this is an updated capital improvement plan from Springfield, but the core and the shell of it can be used in any community. We developed the shell years ago, and the shell is kind of interesting because Rich, you okay?
Yeah, I got something in my throat.
Okay. The shell is pretty interesting in the fact that here's the capital improvement plan, okay? So they went in and they did, you know, A priority projects. They you know, what is the department? What is the actual project? The estimated costs. Something simple like that. And then they went on and then they did B priority projects and C priority projects. I mean, there's a whole host of them. I mean, it's quite a bit. And this is like $1 billion worth of stuff. But here's how they broke it down here. And so the capital improvement process, they listed as, you know, different categories. So, you know, you would have, you know, the committee, which would be us, you know, would have a rating criteria. So, you know, it's not, you know, based on, well, you know, my brother works for the highway department, so I'm going to be, you know, give preferential treatment to the highway department. No, this is criteria that is based in it, and it gives it a weight. So their criteria was project funding and fiscal impact. So their project funding, you know, is there a potential grant that's available? So then that gets moved up to the list. Is it going to have a huge impact financially for the town? That gets moved up to the list. Impact to services to the public. Is the public going to benefit? Is there some service or benefit? That gets moved up to the list. Promotes economic development. So if there's, you know, you know, an improvement in the downtown area that we could potentially have as part of the improvement, then, you know, that will maybe get some additional storefronts occupied in the downtown area, then that moves up on the list. Here's another great criteria: unfunded mandates by the state. So if there's, you know, an unfunded mandate for the town, that would take a precedent over a lower end impact thing. Operations and maintenance impact, relationships to projects and coordination, resiliency, improvement and solutions, public perception of need. Those are the different criteria. Now, we don't need all of those criteria. We could identify, you know, the top 5 criteria or the top 3 criteria and try to shrink the list down a little bit, because we're not going to have as many of projects, I hope not, as you know, as a big city would have, but we would have to create a model that would have a criteria on that. And then then you do your rating. Okay, so you know, and then you rate each category. So, you know, what is available for funding? Is town funding available 10%, and a grant is available for 80%? Does that, you know, now we're at 90%. Does it make sense to move this project up a little bit more so then we can get 100% project completion? Maybe. You know, and then you rate. You have a rating of all of these criterias and the impacts, legal obligations, and so on and so forth. And that's, you know, that's one way of putting together a capital improvement, you know, plan. And then, you know, once we come up with the plan, you know, then we identify the budget, right? And how we're going to fund it. And everybody's, you know, roles and in different things for that. You know, I think it's important that, you know, we try to, you know, set the tone right from the beginning, as we did with you know, our budget. You know, we kind of structured it in a way in which the budget process was improved last year than it was the year before, where you just don't have people coming in and putting together pieces of paper on all different forms and saying, well, this is what I need, and, you know, this is what I want, and, you know, having people feel that, you know, they're unfairly treated in some way because somebody favors a department over another department. And that's what we kind of want to, you know, kind of get away from. And so I think, you know, if we set out a directive saying, hey, look, you know, we want from departments a list of, you know, priorities, and kind of spell it out to them in a letter, saying, you know, what are some of the capital projects that you feel as though that you're going to, your department is going to be impactful in trying to get those lists started, and to try to get an idea as to what we're looking at, and, you know, putting it down, and then, you know, we can evaluate and assign the criteria of those at a later date and time, but just to try to get an idea of what is the list out there. I mean, I don't know if that's what you guys were thinking, or if what your thoughts are, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, whether we consider on behalf of the town and the different departments and boards and whatnot, things that should be considered that they're not, perhaps. There may not be anything like that, but you never know. You know, if Jerry never says he wants to replace a cruiser, we got to tell him, listen, you need an annual. In my opinion, you need an annual, because those cruisers get replaced every like
Right.
3 years.
Yeah.
So you better plan on a new cruiser every year.
Mhm.
So that's 65,000, whatever they are, 75,000, whatever it is. So you should have an ongoing capital outlay. And now I'm sure he'll identify that, but
Right.
it's just to give an example. If just real quick, doubling back to, I can't foresee if we're doing our job, and given that we have Jim in his role as an administrator now, you're not going to have rogue department heads
Yeah,
initiating
right.
on the floor requests or citizen petitions. You can't really do a citizen petition for a capital improvement. Any capital improvement is by definition going to be under the purview of a board, a commission, a department, etc. So
Yeah.
even if Jeremy wanted to buy $100,000 dump truck, it wouldn't be Jeremy it
Yeah.
would be Jeremy requesting that. It would be under a highway department superintendent role, and you basically just stand up in meeting and say, well, if we want to follow our town's bylaws, and then you just quote it, this won't be considered for an appropriation.
Yeah,
It should be the end of the story. Now, the town can do whatever they want,
right.
but you have to operate in faith that the town isn't completely idiotic, et cetera, and so forth. And you just make the case, and you just debate it on the floor.
Yeah.
And you just, basically, if such a thing were to happen, I would just stand up and ask the moderator to, if somehow it got on the warrant, I just asked the moderator to overrule it because it's in violation of our bylaws.
Okay,
So-
yeah.
That's my response to that question you had. But, yeah, and,
So there was no will, 10, 20 years ago to do this then?
yeah,
To butt up against
yeah.
requests?
But we didn't have a town administrator, we didn't necessarily have
Yeah,
a select board that was really engaged. We might not have had a functional capital plan.
right.
And so, our committee, I should say, not plan, but committee. So I'm not worried about any of that. And then, yeah, how we proceed that's the fun part. Let's, yeah, come up with some thoughts and plans and yeah, it's good, it would be good to see, like Springfield did, and, right, how do you rate? So when you've got two competing, everyone agrees that, yeah, we need a capital plan for fill in the blank, whatever the need might be, right? Road resurfacing, we need that everywhere, right? And the only way, we can't just keep every year just trying to get an extra $50,000 in there to try to resurface 10% of our roads. We need a plan so that 20% of the roads are being resurfaced, because they need resurfacing every 5 years, probably.
Right.
Not every road, but,
Yeah.
the major ones anyway, that kind of thing.
And so, for example, an A priority project, this is just an example, was for, a pond, citywide, all the ponds in the city needed to be dredged. And so, that was an $11 million project. That was an A priority project. And I would be willing to bet the reason why they needed to be dredged was because of some environmental mandate that came out from the state that said that you have to do it at a certain period of time, and you have to clean them out, and so on and so forth. So that became an A-level priority project. Maybe it was a B-level priority project at one point, and it got moved up to an A. As projects get off the chart, projects move up. As projects get completed.
Well, that point you made too is that, so Parks wants $100,000 to upgrade one of the couple parks we have. And it's a C priority. It's like, yeah, parks are great, but let's face it, we're a small town, we're not gonna be able to, that's never gonna be an A priority. But then they find out that they got a $75,000 grant. All of a sudden, we only need to come up with $25,000. What's the impact now? It certainly moves up to at least a B,
Oh,
and maybe
yeah.
even an A, because it's mostly funded.
Right.
Sure, we can throw $25,000 at this and
Right,
or
and get a
maybe
project done.
maybe 15,000 this year and 10 and maybe in 2 years. But the grants don't work that way. I know they
Mhm.
probably need to be done
Yeah.
that year. But
Yeah, but I mean, there's grants that, that give you 2 years to complete the project, so,
so
Mm.
yeah.
But
that's nice.
I think it's also important to put money away into our capital planning
Absolutely.
stabilization account, and we have for the last couple of years. We've been bringing it back up, but I think that's a prime example of why we should have money that's not in a specialized stabilization like Adam puts in for his fire trucks
Mhm.
and whatnot, but into regular capital. So if something comes along
Yeah.
like that, where we get a grant and it's, 10%
We can
match funding.
we can operate
We can have,
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
that, those funds already set aside, and we don't need to.
instead of waiting for a whole nother fiscal year to go through
Mhm.
and then possibly lose the grant.
Is
Right.
that the pay-as-you-go bucket?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's just like sort of a open bucket that when we need to tap it, we
Right.
can.
I mean, it still would have to go to town meeting.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
Well,
but it's not tied to a fire truck or a police?
Exactly,
Right.
it is capital planning
dump
for
truck.
for capital projects
Capital
of the town
projects.
in
Yeah.
general.
Mhm.
Okay.
In general.
Until we get maybe a pay-as-you-go capital line, right? And so if you had, I've been just, because we've been so new, we've just been putting money into capital stabilization, right? So there's, if we come up with a plan and we say, okay, it's 200,000 or 150,000 that we want to put in there as pay-as-you-go capital, maybe you want to transfer some of that money out and put it as pay-as-you-go capital, and then replenish it later on as you keep going.
Mhm.
That could be something that you want to do.
So what's the difference between pay-as-you-go and capital stabilization?
Well, it's a little bit different. Capital stabilization is I believe it requires a 2/3 majority out for capital stabilization and for a specific project. Pay-as-you-go capital would be just for, projects that have been identified that, you know, as part of the budget, it's pay-as-you-go capital. So it's like a budgetary line item.
Okay. So a little more or freedom to
A little
work
more
with it.
freedom and flexibility.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you know, and then there's other things that you can do. You know, I don't think that we're gonna really, hopefully, not necessarily need to do any type of debt issuance unless there's some, you know, major project or major, you know, catastrophe where we have to borrow money, but, you know, I don't think we're gonna be there, hopefully, you know, not, you know, in the coming, you know, few years. So, you know, obviously there would be debt issuance if we did a public safety complex or something like that. But, you know, other than that, I don't see us really doing anything like that at this point. You know, I know that there was talk about, you know, our computers are old, okay? Looking at computers for the entire building. I know that, you know, Rich had mentioned, you know, possibly leasing. I'm looking into seeing, you know, if that's even an option available, and it very well may be. But you know, computers in general are expensive, and you know, we'll have to get a price as to, you know, what we're going to need, and you know,
Just have to be leery of the leasing
right,
because of the information that's housed on the hard drives.
right,
Yeah, that'd have to be part of the contract, that those, either we keep them or they're destroyed.
yeah. So
That shouldn't be a problem, I'll bet.
Yeah, and you know, at a first initial face value of, I'm just picking on the computer thing here. You know, I talked to an IT company, and it was just one, you know, and you know, before there was a lot of companies that were leasing them. Now that there's, you know, unless you've got like thousands of them, they don't really do, you know,
No,
that
small.
smaller leases anymore.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, but I will look into it a little bit more.
The trend right now too is to have more files on a centralized system. So
System.
that you don't even need much of a, we're going back to like mainframe terminal
Right,
kind of situations, like in the 70s, right?
right.
So you can have a really basic laptop or desktop, and
Everything's in the cloud.
everything's in the cloud. You know, you don't need any local storage really.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be able to do it less expensively that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we may need to set it up a certain way on our end too. We might, you know, get rid of the server. You put
Mhm.
everything in like SharePoint or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
And that's something that IT, you know, people can,
Advise
Guide
on,
us.
yeah.
Just a quick question, not to go too deep into the computer thing right now, but how many computers does the town
oh, that's a good
manage?
question.
Do we know?
Um,
Roughly.
Probably a
you
lot.
So the nearest 10.
about 40.
Near- Okay, I was gonna guess 30 some,
Yeah,
Mm.
so,
about 40.
okay.
So they're not,
Between all locations.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, they're not terribly expensive,
I
but
was
if you
gonna say
figure
no.
they're $1,000 a piece maybe, that's
Yeah.
$40,000 right there
Right.
if we went wholesale and just replaced everything, so.
Yeah.
yeah.
Which you don't wanna do, you wanna put it on the schedule. So you
Yeah,
replace it
well,
every-
right.
So many
They
every year.
Yeah, they should be
Yeah.
constantly
10
rotating
10
out.
a year,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and, I don't know, we should pick a life cycle.
right,
yeah.
5 years at the most, maybe,
right.
you know, we should decide. I
That's
mean,
correct,
you
fair
look at
enough.
somebody like Corinne, who has a really old computer, and it's just a terrible,
So,
Yeah,
I
she
mean, to
doesn't
go
get
under
anything
capital,
done.
it has to be at least 5 years.
Yeah,
Useful life has
okay.
to be 5 years if
Right.
you're
Right.
going under capital, otherwise it's just a
Oh,
straight
okay.
outlay.
all right, that's true.
So,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think nowadays, I think you can get by 5 years on a computer. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
you can.
Yeah.
I mean, we have currently, I mean, some of the,
that's our,
some of the ones are like 2016, you know, in the
Yeah.
building. So, I mean, you know, and they're still functioning somewhat, I guess.
Yeah, I have let me see, a 2016 laptop, it works great,
Yeah.
you know, so yeah, you can.
Yeah.
get that
At least
long.
5 years.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say probably 5 is about,
5's probably a fair number.
yeah.
Yeah.
does
And,
that 40 include the laptops that we own too?
I believe so. I believe so. Yep. Yep. I mean, there's some laptops, and the laptops that we have, I don't know if they were new, it didn't look like
I
they
don't
were,
think they-
no, they were like refurbished laptops, so, you know, that's something that we'll have to look at there too. I don't know how, up to what level of refurbishing they were done or whatever have you, but we'll have to look at that. You know, I think that, you know, one other thing that, you know, that a lot of departments don't realize is that, you know, they get this big piece of equipment, right? And they didn't realize that, number one, you may have to have somebody, you know, trained on it, right? You may have to have some type of training or hold a professional licensure in order to operate it. You know, there may be insurance, there's going to be insurance costs with, you know, with this, you know, piece of equipment. So all of these things have impacts. And so, you know, whether, you know, if you're gonna get a, you know, a huge, you know, dump truck or something, you know, that's going to, you know, does the person who operated it, do they need a CDL? I mean, do we have that person that has a CDL? You know, I don't know, you know, all of these different things. Do we have, you know, is it properly budgeted for new pieces of equipment? I think we would just kind of all, you know, just hope that we had enough money there, you know, to make sure that, you know, we have, you know, the proper coverages for equipment, for our insurance. These are all big things. I just had the insurance people in today, and, you know, there's, you know, insurance costs keep rising, you know. There's a lot of claims out there for when there's national events, you know, such as weather-related events. It all impacts, you know, premium. So if there's something happening in the south that, you know, it will impact the Northeast at some point on premium. So, you know, that's just some things to keep in touch with. I don't know, what else do you guys have that you were thinking about, or what type of letter that you want to maybe potentially send out to departments to, you know, to get some responses back, or I could draft something up and you guys could take a look at it, and, you know, maybe we could send it out next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just solicit you know, there's a capital planning committee now, and you can cite the bylaw.
Yeah, right,
you know,
right,
or
right,
whatever,
right.
and just say, yeah, give us a wish list,
Mhm.
you know, and emphasize, put that in caps.
Yeah, right, right.
It's a wish list.
Forward thinking.
Yeah.
And let them prioritize according to, you know, because it's when I saw your list of page after page after page of all the projects that Springfield's doing, and yeah, it's like they had 2 pages of just a priority.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
right.
like-
And that's okay.
It is.
That's,
It is. It's just
I
like-
rather have everything in the
Right.
kitchen sink in there,
Right.
and for us to say, "Oops, we forgot that," and
Right.
you know, it was something big.
Right.
You know, put everything in there in the kitchen sink. We'll have to go through it, and that's the work of the
Right.
committee, is to go through it, prioritize it, schedule it out, see how we can, you know, make it happen.
So on the bylaw, though, it said that, and I know on the prior committee, that there'll be forms.
Forms, yeah,
That the committee
yep.
establishes and sets out for them to fill out.
Fill out, and that's something that, you know, I can send you out some examples of, and you guys can take a look at, you know, it's kind of a straightforward, you know, form, it's nothing fancy, but, you know.
Right, but at least it'll be
It's
standard,
a
so we're gonna
standard.
look at the same
Same
form for
form,
every
yeah,
single department,
right,
and
right.
every department will be required to provide us with the same information.
Right,
Had
Right.
you ever used those in the past?
We did,
Okay.
I have no idea what the forms are that we
Yeah.
used, I'm sure there's probably better forms
Yeah.
out there,
I'll get
You
one,
can
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure that,
Okay.
you know, we could find sample
Yeah.
forms.
And then, you know, maybe that form will be attached with the letter, that we send out to all the departments, and, you know, we give them, you know, a period of time to respond, you know.
Are we trying to have a capital plan or report by the annual town meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
all right.
Well, at least a plan,
Oh, a
Okay.
plan,
Yeah.
yeah, because the report would be for last year,
yeah.
so the annual.
Oh, but
report-
I
so
thought we had to
anything that
send something to the selectmen
Yeah,
prior to the annual town meeting.
But it's for what you did last year.
Yeah. So that would
So
be,
prior to the town meeting for what was done in 2023, we would send them a report to be in the annual report. So whatever we
Oh,
did
I
this
see,
year in
okay.
'24 would go in
Mhm.
25's report, like next year.
Okay,
that's for the annual town report, but, I mean, we could still create the plan and the budget and all of that aspect of it.
yeah.
And then the report, that's just a committee report.
Well,
Right.
see, this says Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee shall submit its approved capital budget to the annual town meeting for adoption. So we have to be prepared to give something to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee
Mhm.
probably a couple weeks
Mhm.
before, like, the warrant is wrapped up, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so,
Cause they've gotta, both boards have to look at it, approve it, and
Right.
then
Right,
that's our capital plan for FY 25 or 4?
so there'd be 25.
25.
25, right. And that becomes a warrant for that appropriation to set aside that amount of money.
Right, right.
Or a
Yeah.
series of, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
To be part of
Right,
the
yeah.
budget, yeah, for that year. And then, you know, the next 4 years, you know, you've laid it out in a plan.
I would like to look farther than 4 years. If we only report on 4, that's fine,
Mhm.
but like, I mean, Adam's stuff, Jeremy's stuff is
Mm-hmm.
year. I'd rather have it in a spreadsheet saying it's gonna go out,
yeah.
2030, so
Mhm.
we know that it's coming, right?
Mhm.
So that new fire truck is got, what, a 20-year life cycle? Is that, I can't remember, it's at least 20 years.
I would think so.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
at least 20, it might be 30. But even setting aside 50,000 a year for 20 years,
I
because it's
agree.
gonna cost $1 million in 20 years.
Yeah,
at least,
inflation, look
at
what happened to
least.
the prices just in the
Right,
past couple of
right.
years, so.
Mhm.
So that's a good example. Yeah, if you can squirrel away 50,000 for the
Mhm.
next 20 years, you
Mhm.
better plan on that,
Yeah,
so you're
Right.
not jammed up, you know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, just looking at so we're looking at like a, last day for selectmen to receive petition, okay. So we're looking at like a May 1st deadline in terms of getting all of this wrapped up, right?
Okay.
So, you know, maybe there's a little bit more of a give and play there, you know, maybe another week. But, you know, trying to get, you know, this document created, okay? You know, I'm not, you know, obviously, the departments are gonna have to respond to us sooner than May 1st, but, you know, sometime in mid-February, you know, mid-February, you know, I would think would be enough time to, you know, 2-3 weeks, I don't know, I mean, I don't know, what do you think is fair?
Do that, and if it slips, but it'd be better to start.
Yeah, because they've got their budgets due, they've got their annual
Mhm.
reports due, they've got their inventory due, now they have this due. Just speaking as a department head, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm,
Plus, I mean, personally, I'm doing year end,
mm-hmm,
so I'm in the middle of year end as well, calendar year end. But I think that we need them in to look at them at some point in March,
Mhm.
if we're gonna compile and start discussing these and
Mhm.
putting them together, so that we can meet again, once they're all together, before our
Mhm.
May 1st deadline.
mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe, you know, maybe we were generous, we give them till the end of February to send them back to us?
February 23rd is that Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Then that way, if they slip a week,
Good.
You
I
can-
mean, what is it, January 23rd today, right?
Yeah.
So if the letter goes out on Monday, I mean, I think that's
yeah.
fair, right? Or
Okay.
Monday or Tuesday?
And then whoever doesn't have it in by the 23rd, you can give them another week till March 1st,
Mm-hmm,
Mhm.
and we can meet, you know, after that.
mm-hmm,
That should be time, I think,
mm-hmm.
if that's all right.
What do you think, Dawn?
Yeah. That's 4 weeks.
I mean, obviously,
Too
I
soon or
think-
too late?
I think a lot of departments know what, you know, some of the stuff
Yeah.
that they're looking to do, you
Adam, I'm sure
They
does.
just may not know costs associated
Right,
with them.
right, right.
So that's
And they
what
don't, they don't have
It's-
to be specific.
Yeah.
You know, they can be estimates, you know.
Yeah, because the
I-
cost will change all the time, right?
So I think
Right.
if that's,
But I mean, realistic estimates. I mean, I'm not talking like,
Yeah.
you're buying a piece of equipment that's $100,000 and you're telling us you only need 50 to make the purchase now. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I mean, if you say, well, it's gonna be, around, 90,000 now, and if it gets up to, somewhere around, 100, by the time it gets funded, then you'd have to understand that.
and I think that's one thing that we should probably build into our spreadsheet or however
Mhm.
we're tracking this is an inflation rate.
Mm-hmm,
So if they come to us now
mm-hmm,
with a $60,000-$70,000 piece of equipment that they're looking for, that we build in inflation, if it gets on the C list and we don't get around to it till 3 years, it's not still gonna be
right,
60,000-70,000, it might be 90,000 by that
right,
point.
Mm,
So I
right,
think to build in an inflation
Yeah.
rate would probably be wise
yeah,
on our end.
yeah.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
but,
I think as long as they don't need to have in-depth detail of what exactly they're looking for, but they know, I'm gonna need, a cruiser,
mhm,
every 3 years, or I'm gonna need a
Mhm.
fire truck
Mhm.
or an ambulance in so many years.
mhm,
Jeremy knows he's gonna need this piece of equipment
mhm.
to replace it in 5 years.
And maybe in that letter, we tell the departments, hey, look at, build in, a 2 or 3% increase in cushion in there that, gives some wiggle room for, price adjustments or something, I don't
Mhm.
know.
Well, I don't think we need to get, this year, we're just starting out,
Mhm.
we just gotta get started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Don't load people down with too
Mhm.
heavy of an expectation, just say, like I would expect Jeremy, not Jeremy, but,
Adam?
Chief Millat, to say, yeah, I need a new cruiser, figure a new cruiser every year,
Mm-hmm,
and to keep that rotation going, cause
mhm.
what do they have, 5 cruisers?
Yes,
They definitely need a
5 or
cruiser
6,
every
yeah.
year, cause there's no way those cars last more than 5 years, that's my understanding right now.
Mhm.
is that If they last 5 years, we're doing good, so you better figure out a
Mhm.
cruiser every year, that kind of thing, but the cost doesn't really matter so much right now, and then next year, we can really tighten things up, put real numbers on, cause if you start asking people to pinpoint, I don't want people getting bogged down.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know exactly what it'll cost, and then they wanna
Mhm.
send a good report, but then if they're like me, that you want it right the first time, and that's not the
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
We don't care if it's right, we just wanna know, what are you thinking?
An estimate,
Yeah, we just
yeah.
want an estimate. Overestimate, don't underestimate,
Mhm.
we'll find out the real numbers later, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, yeah.
And this first, since this is all new, that, like, this year, we're gonna get a big list of stuff.
Oh,
to-
yeah.
To like
Yeah.
flesh this out,
Yeah.
right? Next year, it'll be
Don't-
like one piece of equipment here, one piece there,
Right.
cause we've already got all these
Right,
pieces of things
right.
already in there
And
from
then,
this year, right?
maybe because of 25, maybe, I would imagine that projects will be funded in 25, so as, stuff will be taken off of the list,
Mm,
and then projects will move up,
Yeah.
and then projects will replace those other projects. So it's a constant, moving
Mhm.
of projects. And that's where, and how towns and cities, get stymied out of it. Well, they don't wanna do the work of putting it all together on a plan like this. They rather just say, well, I need this, I need that. It doesn't work like that. That's how you get into trouble, and then sometimes nothing gets done. And then you have to play catch-up for the years where nothing got done. And there's, there's, unfortunately, some of our buildings are like that here. And we have to, play catch-up to that.
And
Yeah.
I think that's an important point too, is, the buildings are under the selectmen's purview, and that's one thing that never, ever got put on to the capital planning,
Yeah.
is they totally got overlooked, but I think that's important to remember, that we need to look at our buildings as well. And that needs to get looked at as far as what kind of maintenance needs to get done, or improvements need to get done annually.
So I think when we talk about capital planning, I picture a fire truck and I picture a dump truck, and
Right.
I never think about the roof on
I
this
was just gonna
building,
ask, who's
or-
responsible for dealing with the roof up there? Is
Yeah,
it- I mean,
it's all.
FinCom
it-
is.
It's like,
No, it's part of our capital plan, right?
I'll
and
make sure it gets
capital
put in the
budget.
plan.
Yeah.
You know, those are all things, you know.
the buildings are under selectmen's purview.
Buildings under
Yeah.
selectmen, yep. You know, but, you know, department heads who are in these buildings also have a responsibility to communicate what's going on in these buildings, right? So if there's an issue of, you know, I had Adam go out this fall, inspect all the buildings for fire code, okay? And I wanna know what's going on, you know, are we up to date?
Mhm.
You know, I know, you know, we came back and we found out, I'm not gonna mention departments, but, you know, there's emergency exit lighting that is not working properly, okay? Now, this is lighting that you go into your building, you see it every day, it's not lit up, it doesn't work. You know, if it doesn't get reported to me or to an Adam or to somebody, then it's never gonna get fixed, right? And so there is responsibility for department heads, even though the selectmen run the buildings and have control over the buildings. It's to the department head's responsibility to either report it to, primarily the town administrator, because you have that person now. But if you didn't have a town administrator, to the selectmen, right? So, and then, you know, that would be, you know, how we could take care of things. And so, you know, those things, those types of, you know, important things that need to get done have to get done, you know, and, you know, and if it's a board that you report to, well, then the board should be conveying this to the town administrator. So, say, for example, you know, Ralph comes in and says, well, you know, there's, you know, $500,000 worth of stuff that needs to be repaired down there, you know, he's gotta report that to the sewer commissioners, which ultimately would report it to me, and then I would, you know, bring it to the committee and to the board, type of deal.
And maybe putting something in the letter to the department heads, make them aware it's not just equipment that you need, but it's also your.
Building.
Your facilities.
Yeah.
You know, what might need to happen at your building, you know, what needs to get done. So I think that might be a good
Mhm.
reminder to them,
Mhm.
as well, to not just look externally.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important thing, you know, this letter will be important. Obviously, the form will be important. We wanna make it as simple as possible for people to, you know, to put their information down and to provide it back to us. And then we can obviously go through that. In the interim, while we wait for projects, you know, maybe, you know, part of the committee can think about how they wanna rate them, right? And I can give you some examples of how we rated things in the past, so that departments don't feel like they're, you know, being shortchanged, or departments are not, you know, favored over other departments, so there's no appearance of that. Because we're not trying to, you know, you know, say, what, you know, we promote this department over somebody else. That's not the case, so, it's all the biggest impact, makes fiscal sense to,
Yeah.
you know, to move forward. You know, it makes fiscal sense if we have a grant right away available to us that we can apply for and, you know, use some of our own money as seed money to get started too, for a project. It makes sense, so hopefully, you know, those types of things we can identify and move forward with, and, you know, departments will see, okay, you know, it's fair, it's equitable, and, you know, we're trying to move projects along. You know, another thing that, you know, we looked at, you know, another big project's gonna be, you know, is, you know, a new roof for senior center. Senior center's gonna need a new roof, at some point, possibly some, you know, some new heating equipment down there. You know, these are all projects that, you know, part of a building are very expensive, and, you know, will need to be addressed at some point. So any other questions or comments, or?
can we go to discuss creation of a capital budget? I just wanted, like,
Sure.
it's like, what kind of numbers are we looking at here that potentially could even be considered?
I mean, I don't know, again, I think, the budget, you may wanna we may be only able to start with something small, right? And then try to pick away at it, but, the overall plan may have, $1 million of stuff that needs to get repaired. I don't know, or fixed, or invested in, or, I don't know until we get all of those
Yeah, I guess
responses back.
I expect the wish list to be much, much more than that.
Yeah.
But what I meant was, what can we afford to start with
Mhm.
as a town? Are we talking about a capital set aside of 300,000? Are we talking about?
Oh, you mean like a pay-as-you-go capital?
Yeah, something to get started with.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
is that-
I'd have to take a look and see what's in stabilization. I'm not sure what our balance is, so let's.
608,
608?
I believe
Does
so.
that include any, reserve projects? Or is that strictly capital stabilization?
Strictly capital stabilization, yeah.
Okay.
608. Or thereabouts. I mean, it could be a little different with interest, but, 608, is what we have. We still have some free cash available, right? We were very good with, the selectmen were very good with, putting aside some free cash. So, hopefully there's no catastrophic event that happens between now and June 30th. But there's still some cash available, potentially.
Mhm.
Of about a little over 400,000, I believe, yeah. So, we're doing pretty good.
It's good not to spend all of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's something to think about, think about it. I don't know if, it's hard to say right now. We have those numbers to play with. I mean,
Okay.
it's something, to think about. I really wanna see what we have for requests that come in, and, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's gonna help me to see the requests.
Yeah.
I have a hard time, we can't prioritize anything, we can't come up with any kind of financial numbers or timelines or anything until we get some hard stuff coming in,
Mhm.
and then we can start figuring it out.
Mhm.
But yeah, minimally, we could fund that pay-as-you-go, maybe half of it. And if it's just transferring out of one thing to another, that'll be easy. We could fund that up.
Mhm. What are your thoughts on having a dedicated line on the budget for like a pay-as-you-go?
Well, I guess it all depends on the requests and the priorities.
Mhm.
So, like, just a quick example, did you get a request from the school about their, at Warren Elementary, their HVAC system, the glycol
Mhm.
treatment for the system they use over there?
Mhm.
Is something-
I mean, I've heard them mentioning
Yeah.
that, but I haven't gotten
They should
a
be requesting that. I
formal
know.
request, no.
Okay. And then an additional one that I'm aware of from attending their meetings is that, apparently the sidewalks over there are in some kind of pretty
Mhm.
severe disrepair, the driveway sidewalk area, and, so, if you haven't gotten it, you should be.
I haven't gotten anything yet,
Okay,
yeah.
so.
So the
So
elementary.
that has a certain urgency priority kind of a
Mhm.
thing to it, and if that's, $150,000, then, it's not the kind of thing that can go, 3 years down the road. It's gotta be tended to, if it's gonna be tended to, it should be tended to
Mhm. Mhm.
sooner than later, kind of.
And it's an important too, so, I mean, Ray, you have a great example there. You use, the schools as an example. Now, if we do this and, you know, we go about and we get made funds available for the school, so it would be the school's responsibility then to, you know, administer the project, right? And to make sure the project's done correctly and on time and on budget and, you know, within that realm. So that's important to understand this, and that, you know, for the town projects and the town's aspects of things, you know, that would be my responsibility, right? So I'm assuming that they would have somebody over there at the schools that would be their responsibility.
I suspect Mark, their head custodian guy, would, like he did with the HVAC program,
Yeah.
he kind of oversaw it.
Yeah,
But I know there's just, I don't want to get too far down into a specific about that, but just to address it real quick, is that, you know, I think there's this gray area of, like, the elementary school is the town's
responsibility,
property.
right?
And then, so where does the line, do we just provide them the money to do that project, and then they oversee it? Or do we oversee it? You know, we don't need to
Yeah.
sort that out now, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the purpose of our
Well,
committee,
that's a very valid point, and,
Yeah.
you know, and I would imagine that the schools would be coming to us for funding, right?
They've talked about submitting a capital plan request,
Right.
and I thought they had already done it, but
No,
if
yeah.
they haven't, they will be
No.
soon, so.
So,
And can I just say,
Yep.
are they, I know we're responsible for the elementary school, so
Mhm.
that's easy, so that should be on our capital plan, but what
Mhm.
about, how does the high school,
so
middle school
the
work?
high school, middle school work, it's proportionate, so
Okay,
I
so,
think
whatever they-
we have a proportion of it, and West Brookfield has a portion of
Yeah.
it.
so when we get a number from them, are we assuming it's our 60% or the entire
No,
cost?
it should be just our portion of it, you
Okay.
know. Now, we just recently helped them out with a
The
repair to
generator.
their generator.
Yeah,
Now, I mean, I realize that's only $3,000, but, you know, we picked up the whole tab.
Yeah.
And theoretically, you know, that's the high school, so that's, you know, should have been, you know, a portion to West Brookfield. But, you know, I think the board wanted to step up and do something
Yeah.
as a good faith effort and just take care of it, and we did. And I get it that, you know, that's also our shelter too, but West Brookfield residents can go to that shelter too, right?
Yeah.
So,
and there was an explicit acknowledgement of
right,
the board doing that for them, and
Right.
with thanks for that at the
Mhm.
last committee meeting, just last night, I think. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah. Let's track of the days.
yeah.
Yeah, they expressed gratitude for that aid. So,
So, I can get a letter drafted, and you guys
Okay.
can take a look at it. Remember, this is a committee, so, you know, everything that we do is subject to the open meeting law. So, you know, I will forward you each individually a copy of the draft, and you just respond back to me directly, and I can make modifications or changes to it, as you would request. And then we'll track down a form, we'll get a form, and, you know, that will be attached to the letter, and we'll email it out to all the departments early next week, with the date of, Ray, what was the date?
23rd?
23rd of February,
February 23rd.
and again, Dawn, was that too soon or too late for you?
I was erring on too soon.
Because
Um,
you're slammed right now.
I think all departments are slammed right now.
Okay.
With their budgets due and budget meetings going on. But budgets are due by the 1st of February, right?
Budgets are due, well, the budget meetings are with me next week.
Yep.
And then they're due finalized back February 8th.
February 8th. Okay. And then we just got the email about the annual reports.
Annual reports are March 1st, I believe.
Right. So that's gonna fall right within
Yeah.
that line.
Mhm.
I don't personally care.
Mhm.
I think as long as we had some, I mean, I think by mid-March, we need to meet
Oh, yeah,
to address what the requests are.
right.
So if you wanted to push that, I don't personally care, as long as they were in, if you wanted to say March 8th instead, but,
Mhm.
but, you know, but a hard March 8th would be okay with me. Because then we could have them, and we could meet in the middle of March.
I think
know.
that gives them time to focus on their budgets,
They
their
can do the
annual
budgets,
reports,
they can do the reports,
get them
and
done.
then, because
That should
but-
already be part of your,
my perception is that what we're asking for should be a pretty easy do. It shouldn't be, I'm not expecting overly complicated,
Hmm.
you know, perfectly thought out,
Mhm.
because this is a new process for them, they haven't had to do it for years. I mean, good department head, I don't want to disparage anyone.
It's all right, we're not being recorded or anything, right?
Good department heads
No, this is
probably are
recorded.
already
Oh.
thinking they're probably already thinking along these lines anyway, but they just haven't formalized the process. Some have done it better than others. Adam seems to be a good example of, he seems to be pretty conscientious about it, because he has to be, and Jeremy too. That is a big part of their job. I don't know, as a department head, what capital planning do you really have to do?
right. So
Maybe some new equipment.
There's really no.
But if
There's not a lot
It's gotta
that,
follow
No.
these rules, so.
No.
right,
most-
No.
you know.
But I know COA, sewer department,
Sewer
Okay.
department, yeah, the bigger departments, you know, you know, I've been working with sewer, you know, quite regularly. And I know Rich has as well, and,
Right.
you know, there's mandates from the, you know, the
Right.
DEP that, you know, require us to make significant capital investments down there, and are gonna require us money, so that's another legal reason as to why some of those projects, you know, could potentially be up, you know, higher on the scale
Right.
down there. And so he's aware of projects. He's got lists of projects. Ralph's got lists of projects of what, you know, he's just gotta put it together and put it
Yeah.
in a form. You know, I think a month is fine, is more than fair for everybody, because I think this was, this has been discussed, capital planning has been discussed for a little bit of time now, with the new creation of the revised bylaw. This shouldn't be really a surprise to
Right.
anybody.
Hmm. So are we doing Feb 23rd or March 8th?
I don't care.
What's the consensus?
I'm just one person. so-
Well, I'm pretty neutral about it personally.
When,
We've got a department head here though, who I don't wanna,
it's okay. I
don't wanna
get-
strong arm her
I-
right now,
I-
you know, it's
I
the
get
first
offended
meeting.
by
I don't
all of
wanna-
Yeah.
When are we looking to have our next meeting? So
Like
let's
this.
look at that, because if we're not looking to have our next meeting until mid-March, why are we
I-
asking them for February 23rd if we're not even gonna look at them?
I'll give
Well,
it
that-
Okay.
I think our next meeting should be within 2 weeks after whatever deadline we set.
Okay.
A week or 2 weeks at the longest.
I would say at least a week. If you're gonna go,
'Cause you-
if you're gonna go March 8th, then I would say like a week, we should meet right after
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if there's anything we can do prior to getting the inputs.
Well, you may wanna start thinking about a criteria
Oh,
of evaluation.
Okay.
Of how you're gonna evaluate these things, and, I
Okay.
think maybe, before you even see the requests, I think,
Yeah.
that would be even fair, you could tell the department heads, hey, we made up this criteria before we even knew about any of the requests. So,
Yeah.
I think that maybe you may wanna, in that period between now and March 8th, to maybe look at, what criteria of how you think you wanna evaluate these projects.
So are we going to receive these all at the meeting? We're gonna look at them together, we're not
Sure.
gonna look at them individually before the meeting?
So what I
Is
could
that
do
my-
is I could, when I get them on March 8th, if I say by noon on March 8th,
Yeah.
I could get them all scanned in and emailed out to everybody that day. So then if we weren't gonna meet till the following week, theoretically, you could have these, in your persons to review.
Is this day and time good? Tuesdays at 4? Because we can meet on the 13th.
You're talking February or March? March is.
Oh,
fall.
sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. The 12th,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what I was thinking too, but if we meet on the 12th, I don't think that I'll have time to review all of them between when you email them on the 8th,
Mm-hmm.
before the meeting on the 12th.
What about the 7th? I mean, nobody's here on the 8th anyways, except for me. March 7th, I think, could be a realistic date for departments to get them in. You know, a Thursday,
And then meet on the 12th?
then meet on either the 12th or the 13th.
Yeah, I could do either one of those, I think.
I could
It's
do the
good.
12th.
It's good for me.
The 12th, okay. March 12th, okay.
So you wanna have them do March 7th?
Yeah.
Four PM on the 12th?
Sure.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So between now and then, we have to come up with a criteria.
Yeah, you think about, you know, a criteria, and again, you can shoot me an email, and then I can certainly, you know, send it individually to members, so that, you know, if you have some thoughts or ideas on a criteria before then, we can certainly do that.
Would you be able to provide us with
Yes.
copies of those criteria, just so we have
Yeah.
something to go off of?
Like a baseline, yeah. A lot of this is real technical stuff. You know, a lot of it won't apply to us small towns, but like I said, the core here is what we're looking for. And I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, and, you know, they had 8 evaluation criterias, you know, on a smaller town. Maybe we have 3 to 5
Yeah.
evaluation criterias, you know, the biggest impact to residents. You know, the goal of the town is to get more economic development, maybe, you know, does it have impacts on economic development? You know, public safety, you know, impacts, you know, type of deal.
Okay, we gotta make sure this is updated too.
Yep, yep. So I don't know why, maybe she got confused, or maybe she thought it was updated.
Can we circle back to agenda item 1?
Yes. So, yes, the good point, Ray. Who, from this group, not me, from this group, would like to be the chair of this committee, vice chair, clerk, so on and so forth? We have to keep, you know, minutes of the meetings.
I'd be happy to be a clerk. Given that I've only attended 2 finance committee meetings, was it even 2? There was 1 at
I
least.
thought there was more than that, no?
There
Really?
was,
That's
but
it?
one got,
Canceled.
kinda-
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember
they-
that, yeah.
and so being relatively new to the whole game, I'd be happy to put my name forward as a clerk. But,
Didn't take the minutes?
yeah, I could take
Yeah.
minutes.
Okay.
Didn't you mention you wanna be chair?
I was just gonna ask you the same. I heard rumors that you said you wanted to be chair.
The rumor mill is just terrible.
It is, it is.
I'll be chair if
Would
you
you be
want.
willing
Yeah,
to be chair?
you have to be vice
Okay,
chair though.
I'll be your vice
All
chair.
right, I'll be absent for the first 3 meetings. That's okay?
You're off.
Yeah, I'm fired.
So I'll make a motion that Rich be appointed as chair of the capital planning committee, that Don be appointed as the vice chair, and that Ray be the clerk of the capital planning committee.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let it be written, so let it be done.
Okay, very good.
Alrighty.
And then, so, you know, and then what we'll do is at our next meeting, we'll review the minutes, and approve those at the next meeting, as part of our agenda item. And then obviously, these meetings are gonna be carried, by, our local cable access, so that, you know, if somebody needs to go back to the meeting to, you know, to see what was said, you know, you can research the meeting relatively easy and to see what was said. So, if you need some help on the minutes, Ray, that, you know, you'll have that as a recording.
Okay,
Um,
I'll put together some quick minutes for today.
Mhm.
Just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Was anything else, or?
No?
The only other thing I was thinking is just to get a step forward for our next meeting. Do we wanna talk about some sort of template or Excel form or something to at least have set up so we can kinda hit the ground running for next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it can be something, you know, something simple like this, you know? I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know,
But if you wanna do, well, I mean, we can start with that, but if you wanna do like inflation and stuff like that, we're, may need like maybe a couple sheets or something,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, so.
Okay,
And I would
So
like
I'll-
to have some sort of, almost, I don't know, like is it a Gantt chart, you know, that shows like the timelines?
yeah, so that's
So we
more like
know.
a forecast.
Sure, okay,
You know, forecasting it out.
right,
Yeah.
This is,
Which we
you
can
know,
do in
we,
Excel.
we can do that, yeah.
yeah, that's more priority A, B, and C, and you just tick them off
yeah,
as you
Yeah,
go through.
yeah,
But yeah, then there's a 5-year forecast, is, you know, what do we plan on,
right,
you know, this year, what do we wanna do this year,
Mhm.
next year? And it's kind of the same thing, A, B, C, you're just
Yeah.
throwing it out into,
mhm,
alright. Okay, maybe I can see if I can throw something together.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
If you have any thoughts, you know, let me know. I'll let Jim know, or,
Yep,
anything specific you wanna see, otherwise I'll shoot it out to Jim as soon as I have
Mhm.
it,
okay,
alright?
yeah.
Does that sound good, Ray?
Sounds
Do you
great.
have any thoughts on, like, anything you'd like to see on the chart, or,
Not as I sit here at this
Okay.
second, yeah. Keep thinking of other people that we could maybe invite.
Mhm,
to
yeah.
the committee.
right, I mean, it is posted, posted on the town's website, it's posted outside on the board. You know, anybody who has an interest, you know, please, you know, submit a, letter of interest to our moderator, Dario Nardi. And, I'm sure he'll, you know, get back to you in a prompt manner.
All right,
Okay,
is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. What time?